Okay, good morning, Shalom Aleichem, everybody. It's a very exciting week for Klal Yisrael, 75 years of Eretz Yisrael. Last Shabbos was Rosh Chodesh Iyar. We are well on our way to Matan Torah, and we have the special schos of reading a double parsha, Achrei Mos Kedoshim, the Shabbos, and we have two bar mitzvahs in this shul, the Shabbos, in honor of the double parsha. It is a very special Shabbos for us in Shomrei Torah and for Klal Yisrael.
Rabbi,
yes.
just a quick question, because this, Honey and I talked about this a lot, not a lot, but this came up. How come, if I was doing this, I know I'm different than everybody else, but I would lane Achrei Mos on Monday, right? And I would learn Kedoshim on Thursday, but that's just me.
Okay, good question. I'm not sure.
I mean,
If
give it,
like
give
Kedoshim,
it equal.
you're saying Kedoshim gets shortchanged.
Yeah, it never
Okay.
gets read during the week.
Yeah. Well, yeah, every double parsha, only a single one. We also lose a haftorah. Fair question. Not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
Achrei Mos begins. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe achrei Moshe b'nei Aaron v'korvasam lifnei Hashem vayamusu. After the death of the two brothers of Aaron who came before Hashem, and they died. Says many of the Mefarshim, we have a repeat in this pasuk. The pasuk is repetitive. First, it says Achrei Mos Shnei Bnei Aaron, and then the Torah says Lifnei Hashem Vayamusu. We just said they died. We know they died. In fact, this is a theme that, or an idea that comes up all the time, that we're reminded in the Torah about the death of Aaron's two sons numerous times. But what makes it, why here is it repeated? Says the Dasakanim Miba'ale Tosfos the following. Achrei Mos Shnei Bnei Aaron. The tzara is they died. The Korvasam Lifnei Hashem Vayamusu. They died and they left no progeny. Not only was it a tzara that they died, they didn't leave over anybody from the next generation. One of the reasons Chazal give as to the death of the children of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, is that they refused to get married. Nobody was good enough for them, and therefore they never married, ultimately not leaving over any children in the next generation. So perhaps there is a reminder here. Achrei Mos Shnei Bnei Aaron, it wasn't enough that they died, but they were maybe too picky. I saw, maybe it was Rabbi Fran, they were too picky, and nobody was good enough for them, and they refused, or too selective, and this ultimately caused a double pain to the world. Our Nadav were very holy tzaddikim, but they refused, and this is something to keep in mind. How picky one should be, or selective one should be with all their lists. The shidduchim process today is very complicated and very difficult. It can be challenging for many, and maybe we shouldn't be too selective and too picky in terms of who we choose. That is thought number one. Thought number one for the day. Thought number two. The Achrei Mos, really the main theme of Achrei Mos, is the Avodas Yom Kippurim. And in fact, why is it framed with upon the death of the two sons of Aaron? And therefore it tells us the whole story of the Yom Kippur. What's the connection? It's very simple. What Nadav and Avihu did was that they went into the Kodesh Kodashim unannounced. They were not permitted to go in. So now this is the tikkun. What's a tikkun? When are you allowed to go into the Kodesh Kodashim? That is only once a year on Yom Kippur, and this is the exact order that you must do in order to be allowed to go into the Kodesh Kodashim. and you must be the Kohen Gadol. Right? That's the connection here between these two stories. So in this episode, in this Avodas Yom Kippurim, we learn that the Kohen Gadol changes his clothing numerous times over the course of the day, and he really vacillates between two sets of clothing: the big day Zahav and the big day Lavan, the golden clothing, and which is it all gold? Not really. And the big day Lavan, the white clothing. Now, which are holier? Anyone know which are more elevated? The big day Zahav or the big day Lavan? So it's the big day Lavan that the Kohen Gadol ultimately wears in the Kodesh HaKodashim. Why does he wear the big day Lavan? He can't wear gold in the Kodesh HaKodashim because of the concept of Ein Kategor Na'ases Hanigor, that the gold is something that served as an accuser of the Jewish people. So when the Kohen Gadol is going to defend Klal Yisrael in the Kodesh HaKodashim, we're not going to bring something that's to remind us of a sin that we did in our history. Now the Torah tells us the following: V'rachatz is parak Tetzayim pasuk Chavdal. V'rachatz is bisaro b'mayim b'makom kadosh v'lavash es bigadav v'yatsa v'asa es olaso es olas ha'am v'chiperet v'ado v'ada. The Kohen Gadol is going to be wearing his big day Lavan, and he's going to change. Every single time he changes, he goes to the mikveh. He changes from his big day Lavan, the more elevated clothing, and he changed back into his big day Zahav. Says Rav Moshe Sternbach in his beautiful Sefer Tavdas, he says, he quotes Rashi, because Rashi says we learned from here that not only does the Kohen Gadol go to the mikveh when he's going up in status, when he's wearing gold clothing and changing it to white, he immerses in the mikveh. So too, when he goes down in status of mikveh, of clothing, he also goes to the mikveh. Avalama tzarich tvila kishemeisir big day lavan velovesh shel zahav. Why would the Kohen Gadol need to go to the mikveh, purify himself again, when he's changing from the holier clothing to the less holy clothing? Halo tavarhu, he's tahor. Vero ayafilu lachamuros. He could go anywhere. He is like in the holiest elevated state at this moment. Why is he need to go to the mikveh? The Efshar says or Shermach. Shebisha she'kohen gadol mechin atzmo lavoda b'big day zahav alav lishkach ma'alaso kedushaso shekvar nichnas lifnai lifnei. He just had an experience that nobody else in the world can experience. He went into the Kodesh HaKodashim. Immediately after he leaves, he changes into other clothing, back into the big day Zahav. It's very easy for him to feel like I can't live on this elevated level now that I'm outside. I experienced something unbelievable. I can't experience that anywhere else. I reached my peak, and now I'm just going to be living on the bottom of the mountain the rest of my life. So says Rosh Sternbach that it's very easy for a Jew to forget, right? When they leave a Yom Kippur, right? And now live a more mundane life. Therefore, says Rav Sternbach, that you go to the mikveh again. The Torah says you go to the mikveh again. To not forget that all of this is also holy. Our moments in the shul are holy, right? Some of us wear different clothing. Our moments on Shabbos are also holy. But when we leave Shabbos, it's very easy for a Jew to say, oh, no, like I do special things, that's only for Shabbos. And you're right, certain foods that we have, certain clothing that we wear, but it doesn't mean the rest of the week is not an opportunity to engage in holiness as well. We're not going to maybe reach the top of the mountain, but there's a parallel mountain for the weekday. There's a parallel mountain that's not the Kodesh Kodashim, that's also significant and also needs us to be engaged in and to work in our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? Whether that means you're in the boardroom and, that means you're engaged in the world. That means you're standing in line in the bagel store or at Zadie's. Wherever you might find yourself, there are also opportunities to reach a level of Kedusha, engaging with people, seeing somebody that you don't really want to talk to, but they really want to, share with you about their children and grandchildren, sitting with them or talking to them and giving them patience and time of day makes them feel good. That's Kedusha too. So it says the Torah is going out of its way to tell you that even when the Kohen Gadol leaves the Kodesh Kodashim, you also need to go to the mikvah, because those are also moments of Kedusha. Those are also moments of holiness. Some people only live for like those high energy moments, and every moment of our life needs to be special in its own way, and we have to, work at it. That is the idea of Shternbach, where Achat is Bisaro B'Mayim. Even when you get to a more mundane level, there are moments and opportunities for growth and closeness to Hashem also in those times. Okay, that is thought number 2. I mentioned that we're in the middle of Iyar, and what's fascinating about the month of Iyar is that in our day, the past 75 years, we've seen the month of Iyar take on a different status, right? There's a connection to the month of Iyar to Eretz Yisrael. Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut. Right? It wasn't by accident. Iyar was the day that the state was established. The 28th of Iyar is Yom Yerushalayim. There's a special connection to the month of Iyar and Eretz Yisrael. Now, where do we see this in halacha? This is amazing. This is amazing. How do you spell Iyar? Not a trick question. No? Who wants to throw it out there? How do you spell Iyar?
Aleph Yod Yod Resh.
Aleph Yud Yud Resh. Excellent. Shira, amazing. So says the where do we know this halacha? Like, where would this come up? So in the laws of writing a get, where this is most significant, the Shulchan Aruch discusses months and how do you write them the right way. This is Even Ezer, Kuf, Chaf, Vav. How do you write Adar, Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni, or just Adar? All these questions come up in this Even Ezer, Kuf, Chaf, Vav. And he writes right here, Iyar Bishnei Yudin. Iyar should be written with 2 yuds. V'imkasa bechad yud, hustle. If you write Iyar with 1 yud, the get would be puzzle. Oh boy. Imlo b'shas atzchak. Unless it is a pressing situation. What's the pressing situation? The pressing situation would be where the sofer wrote Iyar with 1 yud and then already gave the get. And in that situation, we would say, okay, the di'evet, it seems like the get would be okay. But really, Iyar needs 2 yuds. 2 of the Mefarshim on the Shulchan Aruch both share the same remez about Iyar. The Beis Shmuel, who's one of the main commentaries on Even Ezer, and Rabbi Akiva Eger. They both say the following, that Iyar with 2 yuds is Rashi Tevos for the following. Again, one of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch writes, Remez L'Davar, Iyar is Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and what's the Resh? Rachel. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel. What in the world is the meaning behind this? So suggests Rabbi Isaac Bernstein, one of the great rabbis from the previous generation, that he says the following. He says that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov represent our connection to Eretz Yisrael from the past. Why do we have Eretz Yisrael today? It was given to the Avos. It was promised to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Each of them, in their own way, settled the land, walked the entire land, and because of them, we have Eretz Yisrael today. But Eretz Yisrael doesn't only play a role in our past. It also represents our ultimate return to the land of Israel. And that is represented by the Reish, by Rachel Imenu, by Rachel Imenu. And that is the message of Iyar. It represents not only the past, but it represents our destiny. That Eretz Yisrael is part of our destiny, with Iyar, two Yuds, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay, so already for today, we mentioned Achrei Moshe ben Aaron. Can't be too picky or too selective. Number two is Barachat B'Sirah B'Mayim, Rav Sternbach. Number 3 is Chodesh Iyar. We'll go here to Parshas Kedoshim. An amazing thought from the Ishbitzer Rebbe. In Parshas Kedoshim, Perek Yutes Pasuk Dalet, here's the following. Al tifnu el ha'alilim, Elohei masecha lo ta'asu lachem, ani Hashem Elokeichem. Do not turn towards the idols, and do not make an idol out of molten metal. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am Hashem your God. Ask the Meshiloach, the Ishbitzer. What does this mean? You can't make you don't worship a statue made out of metal. Elohei masecha lo ta'asu lachem. How would we fall prey? Like you made a metal object yourself, and now you're going to worship it? It seems very, very strange. So says the Ishbitzer, there's something deeper going on. What does metal represent? Metal represents rigidity. It represents the inability to change, the inability to bend. And he says that many of us fall into a routine. What we do and what we don't do. And we worship that routine. And it makes us unbending, unwilling to grow, unwilling to evolve in our service of Hashem, unwilling to evolve as a person. That we can grow, we can become better, we can become more patient, we can become better, more aware and present people. We worship the Masecha that we've created about ourselves. There's some rigidity to our lives, and we become, worshiping that. And he says, most prominently, this plays itself out in tefillah. Do not worship your rigidity when it comes to davening. Many of us, only naturally, you struggle with tefillah. Some of us don't come to shul on time. Some of us just say the words in a very rote manner. We don't always have the proper kavanah, and we don't have the most respect for the kedusha of our Bate Knesios, of our shul. Just because that is what we've been accustomed to do our entire lives, right? some of us like worship that routine. I always, come to shul 15 minutes late. Like that's on time for me. Like I always, take 4 minutes for Shemoneh Esrei. Like I always. And we worship, the Ishbitzer says, our Elohim Masecha, our God of rigidity, our God of our roteness. That's an amazing, amazing word. And our job is to not worship our rootedness and worship the ability to evolve, be open, and expose ourselves to change. There's an amazing story that highlights this with two great Hasidic brothers, Rav Eli Melech, the Rebbe Rav Melech, and his brother Rav Zusha. There's all these stories throughout history that they traveled throughout Europe, and they're always getting into trouble. And one day, they were thrown into jail. And it's like a lot of stories. Like they're always getting into trouble, getting thrown into jail. And they went to sleep, probably slept on the floor. And they woke up the next morning, and the Rebbe Reb Melech was crying. And Rav Zusha woke up to his brother's cry. Why are you crying? The night before, when the two brothers were sleeping, they said, we're going to get the Jews this time. You know what we're going to do? They took a garbage, right, which is really the bathroom for the jail, and they put it smack in the middle of their jail cell. Because they knew, for these two brothers, it didn't matter whether they're in jail or not. They were like on this holy level. But they were going to get them because they knew they couldn't daven, they couldn't pray to their Lord with a pile of excrement in the middle of the jail cell. So the Rebbe Reb Melech woke up and he started crying. I haven't missed a single tefillah my entire life. I never missed a davening. And now this morning, I'm not allowed to daven. I'm not allowed to daven. So his brother turned to him and said, the point of davening is to connect to Hashem. And you know what Hashem wants from you today? He wants for you not to daven. That's the halacha. That's your way of connecting to the Ribono Shel Olam. And he was so touched by his brother's answer that the two brothers, Rav Zusha, Rav Melech, they started dancing in the jail cell. The Gentile guards were looking at this and like, these brothers are nuts. We can't win. And they say, what are they dancing about? They're dancing around the excrement. They said, dancing around the excrement, let's take it out. It's really annoy them. So they took out the bucket and then they were able to daven. But you see from this story, it's such a great story. You see from this story that they were worshiping. What were they? This is what I do every single day. No, what Hashem wants from us is to serve Him, worship Him, right? Not worship our, schedule and the way that we do things. A powerful idea from the Ishbitzer Rebbe over here. Last thought for today comes from, I'll tell you one thought and then I'll give you a brief story. Comes from Rabbi Shaul Nathanson. Pull it up. I have it on my computer. Oh, amazing. The Ahavta L'Orei, you can't, say, learn Parshat Kedoshim without having one thought on Ahavta L'Orecha Kamocha. Right? So, the Ahavta L'Orecha Kamocha, says Rabbi Akiva, Zeklal Gadol B'Torah. However, if you read the Gemara in Shabbos, the Gemara in Shabbos tells a story about Hillel Hazakin, the great Hillel. And there are several stories there about Gentiles that come to Hillel. And they ask him, Hillel, teach me Torah and I want to convert. And one of the stories is that one person says to him, Hillel, teach me the entire Torah on one foot. This guy already went to Shammai the day before and Shammai chased him out with the stick and said, get out of here, you're a joker. But here he said to him, teach me the entire Torah on one foot. And he said to him the following. He said, Ma da'alach saneh lechavercha lo sa'avid. What you hate, don't do to your friends. So asks the Kutzker, some people say the name of the Kutzker, some people say the name of the Chedusharim. I don't get it. Isn't this the same idea as the Ahavta L'Recha Kamocha? Why is he giving him another mimer in Aramaic when just quote him a pasuk in the Torah? What's the most important pasuk? V'ahavta L'Recha Kamocha on one foot. What does it mean? What you don't like, what you hate, don't do to your friends. So the Ger Rebbe says the following. This is really a question of Marsha. That he says that a non-Jew, a Gentile, is an outsider. Is an outsider. They're outside to Judaism. He needed to say what you hate, don't do to your friend, because they can only understand this in the negative. They can't fully relate to the idea that we can connect to our brethren, to our brothers and sisters in Bnei Israel, and treat them like our brothers. They can't relate to that on the positive way. They can only relate to that in the negative manner because they're not an insider. They can't relate to it that way. Therefore, the only Pesach that this potential ger can have to comprehend the connectivity of every Jew would be in the negative manner. Says Rav Yosef Shal Nathanson, he takes this one step further. He says, the love of Jews is not like when the Gentiles get along. It's not the same. Shebi Yisrael, zet tzarech lazeh, v'zet tzarech lazeh. It's not only that we have a commandment to love each person like we love ourselves. We are reliant upon one another. We need each other. Al derech mashal, kol bei asara shechinta sharia. If I want to have a minyan, I need 10 people. I need 10 men. When I want to bench, I need 3 for mizumin. The majority of the mitzvahs that we have in the Torah, we need other people to perform the mitzvah. I can't do hafrashas challah if there's nobody to give the hafrasha to. Right? Okay, today we burn it because we don't kohanim or tameh, but you need, right? I can't make the challah without giving the challah to somebody else. Each one of them, almost all of our mitzvahs are intertwined with other people. And that's a powerful message. That is a deeper meaning of the Ahavta L'Recha Kamocha versus what I don't like, I shouldn't do to my friend. So 5 ideas for today. I'll give you one brief thought, a story. Evan Ezer, Iyar, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Rachel connect to Eretz Yisrael, not only in our past, but also in our future and our destiny. We learn the thought of Elohim Masecha Lo Tasu Lachem, Achrei Moshe Ben Aaron, and the Korban Son of Hashem Vayamusu. And why did the Kohen Gadol go to the mikvah when he was going down, presumably in Kedusha? One last thought, we learned about another pasuk. There's so much here, especially in Parashat Kedoshim, to learn and to bring into our own lives. Lo signovu, you shall not steal. And also that you should keep fair weights in your property. So I read a story this past week, which is amazing. I've never done this before. One of the most important svarim that we have, we're talking about tefillah, on tefillah, commentaries on tefillah, is a sefer called the Avudraham. The Avudraham was written by one of the Rishonim. It might have been the first sefer ever written on the Siddur. It was written by Rav David Avudraham, who was one of the Rishonim, who lived in Seville. Seville is in, anyone know? It's in Spain.
Spain.
Right? So why was his name Avudraham? Why was that his last name? Apparently, he had a store in which he sold things by weight. And he was very, very nervous that he would sell somebody something for the wrong amount of weight. And he would receive too much money for something that he was sold. The lowest form of measurement in Spain at the time was darham. Darham. In Hebrew, we call it darham. Darham. That was like 1/8 of an ounce. That was the measurement. And when people would come into his store and they would say, I would like 9 darhams of, I don't know, fish, he would give them 9.5, or he would give them 10. He was always so concerned about making sure that his weights were proper, to the extent that he probably lost, money over the years on making sure that he was kasher v'yashar, to the extent that he was known throughout Seville as this person that was so yashar. So they called him Avu Darcham, Avu Draham, Darcham. They called him the father, Avu Darcham, of the Darham, that he was so medactic on making sure that his weights and measures were so careful, that to the extent that forever became the name of his Svarim, and the name that we know him by today, Avu Draham, after the measurement of the Darcham that he was so careful about. Okay, with that, I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you.